Hi guys, it's Milne here, and I've got a short video for you on stress management and some tips on how to counteract any anxieties which may be happening at the moment. If you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed and underdone, please hang about, and hopefully this provides some great solutions for you moving forward. So when we think about stress and anxiety, we tend to only be thinking about those emotions right now in the moment when it's happening. And we tend to then look at resources in which we can quickly counteract that, okay? Unfortunately, that can be maladaptive, which means it's only going to exacerbate the problem and make it far, far worse. Now, the best piece of advice I can give you in order to rectify the situation is identify what's been going on. So how do we do that? Well, journaling. Okay, now the journaling has obviously been well documented, pardon the pun, for a long, long time. But for those unfamiliar, what it actually does on a conscious awareness is it raises issues that you can identify easily right in front of you. It gets everything out that's trapped inside, and you're able to spot what's been going on. For those who have been journaling for some time, great. But I bet that you probably don't document the past as much as you probably should. Now, what I'm meaning by that, if you are feeling stressed or you've noticed a pattern within yourself and you're just feeling a little bit wound up and you're not as relaxed and as free as you'd like to be feeling, thinking about documenting where you were 6 months, 2 years, and 5 years ago. Just looking at a timeline of events and sequences and see if you can spot patterns that's been going on since that time. What this will do, hopefully, is have you consciously, again, being aware of particular behavioral patterns and trends, decisions you've been making, maybe people that you hang around, work environments, living arrangements, and so forth. What that does is it then brings the situations of the past to the forefront of your mind, and then you can spot what changes I need to make in order to move forward. Now, what else can we do once we've identified? Well, there's many things, of course, we can do, but some basics are looking at your living situation, okay? Your environment, is it productive for you or is it detrimental? Now, simply applying a little novel experiences in your life can do wonders. What I mean by that is going for a moderate walk or a bike ride, okay? Just going for a drive. Going somewhere new and try to reprogram the brain and shock your system a little bit in a good way. What this does, okay, is it just creates new pathways in your brain, and it's then going to send the right chemicals throughout your body. This is what we want, okay, in order to feel good and to slowly, slowly unwind ourselves and get ourselves into new behavioral patterns that's going to help us feel happy. I hope this helps today, guys. It's some basic tips, but I assure you it can do the world of good. I'll see you soon. Take care. If you're feeling unmotivated, if you're feeling like your routines are kind of all over the place and you're very much struggling to form habits that are going to give you more success and happiness and help your well-being, keep watching because I've got something here for you. So when we think about motivation and you think about habits, we tend to have flashes in the pan, unfortunately. And the key word to think of is consistency. And so many people will hear that, but so many are inconsistent in their consistency. So why is that? Well, number of reasons primarily, but firstly, you've got to think about what is actually going on as a whole routine. Now, a few years ago, scientists came up with what they call the habit loop, which was a 3-step process, and it essentially is being designed to help you understand how habit transformation happens. And the first step of identifying the whole process is looking at your triggers. So thinking about particular instances or situations which just automatically make you go to your next step. Now that can be difficult for some because triggers quite often are there, but people aren't even aware of them. So thinking about what is my trigger is your first step to implementing a new routine. Once you're able to access though that trigger, you can think about the key component, the routine, okay, which is the second step. So you've got the trigger, then we've got the routine. Now this consists of everything that goes into creating a new loop process, right? So stay with me. In this routine part, I want you to think about what are some smaller changes I can implement to adjust how my routine has been going so far. What this will actually do is have you be consciously more aware of how to instill better practices to shift your mindset onto more productivity. So you've got two steps. You got your trigger, you got your routine. Now we need to think about the reward, okay? Now the reward, if you think about it in a scientific aspect, is essentially related to the dopamine, which is chemical, of course, which your brain creates when we feel like we are worthy of enjoying something. So you need to basically design a reward in your mind that is worthy of changing an entire loop routine process, okay? So get your trigger down, think about your routine, and then design a more suitable reward that's going to be beneficial for you, particularly if you're wanting to establish a healthy routine, okay? Now maybe you've had some bad practices or you have been neglecting your well-being and your health a little. So think about a larger reward that's going to be beneficial for me in the long term, but also going to make me feel good on a daily basis. Now, the more we can become accustomed to this process, the easier that transition is going to happen, okay, in establishing a new trigger routine reward process. Now, that leads me on to motivation. People will often think about, again, that flash in the pan with motivation. It comes and goes, or I'm just not motivated at the moment. The problem is, again, you need to be consistent with your routines. Once you're able to establish a success loop, which is that three-step process, you will find your momentum comes, right? And that motivation is the reward as well. And because your brain is then consistently making the dopamine, you're always going to feel motivated along the way. Now that doesn't of course suggest that you're not going to feel times where this is difficult, I'm struggling, I'm not having the success that I desire. But you will understand the processes now on a conscious level, which then begin to get embedded in your subconscious mind. Now, referring to this 3 simple step process, you will be motivated all the time, which is what you want. This goes out to anyone who's holding themselves back or basically struggling to get started. I think, there's obviously a whole range of reasons why these things tend to happen, and we focus on the toxic trains of thought, but underlying it generally comes down to a fear. It could be a fear of failure or just a presupposition of something that's occurred in the past, which is gone and it's non-existent anymore anyhow. So thinking about the word failure, I think it should be embraced, because what it means to embrace your failure is essentially to learn. And you're never going to succeed until you fail well and really learn something from that in order to move forward. Every success story has had an abundance of failures along the way. Unfortunately, we just don't put so much attention to the journey. You don't hear about all these magical moments that happened along the way so much. It's always about, how much money was profited or what accolades were achieved, etc. So there's a little acronym that I put together and I like to use, which is forget about it, learn, understand, repetitively, every time. So using that psychology, in the word failure and applying it in the philosophies of moving forward and everything I've mentioned, it can be just such a massive pressure release and a huge game changer for you. So I just think 2020, it's the perfect opportunity to be trying new things, because we've never seen anything like this, and hopefully we don't again. So you need to launch, get out there and fail really well, and then share it with me once you do. So there's a couple of aspects there we need to think about. The word again, which is reflective of an inconsistent behavioral pattern. And then motivation, that's not what we need to focus on at all, right? Think about good and bad habits, right? We are good and bad habits. We don't have them, they are us and we are them. What do they entail? A whole bunch of decisions and behaviors that's been compiled over a long, long time, which gives us our daily routines. And then unfortunately, our rewards, right? But the brain doesn't really know any different. And habitually speaking, We operate over 70% of our daily actions off our habits. So unless you can take the time to actually think about what is made up in this habit creation phase and then restructure my routines to get the better rewards, you're just going to be going around in circles for the rest of your life, right? So going deeper on that, it's about identity, right? Who you see yourself as, right? And for most of us who feel stuck or in ruts or have been there at one point or another, we don't exactly know that, or we're probably a little bit blindsided by what we actually are versus what we actually see ourselves as being. Now, if you can be real and honest with yourself and then say, hey, this identity right now isn't giving me what I want, then you can start looking at the why and then the implementation of what your desired results are, of course. Now, I'd recommend thinking about creating an identity that you can foresee yourself becoming. Because once you can do that, you can understand what behavioral traits that identity would possess in order to carry themselves on any given day. And I guarantee you, they wouldn't be inconsistent behaviors if you're identifying yourself as somebody who's more successful, happier, healthier, etc., right? So that is kind of the nucleus of, motivation, because it comes with being habitually in tune with who you want to be, right? That's the premise of success. Now, we can gauge success from a whole range of different outlooks, but at the end of the day, if you're not happy, you're not going to be successful in any endeavor, right? So forget about motivation, because that will be your reward and that will come. Think about your identity.